Hello, welcome back to my channel. It is 8:05 on a Thursday, and I am once again struck with an idea. I decided I'm gonna strike when the iron's hot. Usually when I have ideas such as this, I like to get out my lights, get out my big camera, sit down, give a lengthy introduction, and talk about where this idea came from. But you know what? I'm not feeling that today. Today, I'm feeling like running with this idea while it's still fresh in my mind and while I'm still excited about it. So I hopped on my Kindle app. I am about to read a couple of different books for a couple of different videos. What do I do instead? I come up with the idea for yet another video. My idea is to read books similar to my last read on Kindle Unlimited, and I'm pretty hyped about this idea because I just finished a book that I absolutely loved, Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke, so I'm hoping that the recommendations based off of this book are going to be kick-ass. I've done something similar to this in reading, like Goodreads readers also enjoyed books on Goodreads, but I don't think I've ever really explored this function on Kindle. I've explored Kindle lock screen ads, I've explored other functions of Kindle, but in this video I'm going to read books similar to my last read, and I'm excited about it. I think I want to go into these books knowing nothing about them, and looking at the books that I'm being recommended, I pretty much know nothing about any of these books, so I think this bodes well. I feel like this is going to be exciting. I do recognize the author names, and some of these titles look like ones that I've seen before, but I don't really know anything about them. So let's talk about the 5 books that I'm going to read for this video. Up first we have Drowning Erin by, you guessed it, Elizabeth O'Rourke. Makes sense why this one was recommended given that I just finished a book by this author that I really enjoyed. I mean, Kindle doesn't know that I really enjoyed this book, but it makes sense to recommend me a book by the same author. This one I do kind of know what it's going to be about. Erin is a character in Waking Olivia, which I just finished, and I think this is the second book in the series, so makes sense. Also, we have The Plan by Carla Sorensen. I don't know if I've read any books by this author before. If I have, they weren't very memorable. No offense to the author. I don't have any of them on my like top reads of the year list, so can't be that memorable. Then I have Stone Cold by Renshaw. Looking at this cover, kind of looks like this man needs to poop. I will read it. A book that I'm not as excited to read, but like curious about, is Enemies Abroad by R.S. Gray. I've tried an R.S. Gray book in the past. It seems like all of her books kind of sound the same, but the people that love her stories seem to really, really like her stories. So I'm gonna give her a shot. I'm gonna give her another chance and read this book. And then the next book is The Secret by Max Monroe. This one I feel like I've seen a couple of times on Instagram. I want to say it was like the PR company that's like pushing this book is an account that I follow, so I'm not sure like my friends have read this and loved it or anything, but it is a new release and I am tentatively interested in it. Kind of looks like it's gonna be a billionaire workplace sort of romance, which I'm not totally into, but it seems promising enough, so we're gonna go for it. There are technically 2 other books that are being recommended to me, but they're both Elizabeth O'Rourke books, and I kind of want to keep it at 5 books. It just feels a little bit safer and smarter, so that's what we're gonna do. We're going to read books based on my last read on Kindle, and I don't know, maybe it'll be fun. Maybe I'll find another 5-star read. I think it's likely, given that I like Elizabeth O'Rourke books, and I've given all of her books 5 stars, but you know, maybe I'll find some other, like, additional 5-star reads. Maybe this is the way that I'm supposed to be finding 5 stars. We're gonna find out. I look scary because I feel scary. I am 20% into Stone Cold. I've been in bed all day reading because I am bleeding. Stone Cold's kind of cute. It is about our main character, Jovi, named because she was conceived at a Bon Jovi concert. And at the start of the story, she wakes up from a NyQuil-induced slumber and finds that she tagged herself in her ex-boyfriend's engagement pictures. They've been separated or like broken up for 5 years. She was cheated on. Ex-boyfriend is now with the same woman that he cheated on Jovi with. And the ex and his new girl are not like super happy with this, but they don't say anything to Jovi. Instead, we have our hero who reaches out to Jovi and is like, yo, that's not cool. Can you untag yourself from their engagement pictures? And like Jovi's already done this because she's obviously super embarrassed, doesn't remember doing it. And our hero, Stone, engages in some sort of like banter with Jovi. He is a divorce attorney, and actually Jovi is undergoing not a surgery. She is in the midst of her own divorce. She was with a guy for a couple of months. It was just ill-fated. She is a romance novelist. She's a historical romance author. I don't know, that's all I know so far. I mean, that's kind of a lot in the first 20%, but the pacing is like really satisfying. This is not a very long book. I think it's under 300 pages, and already I am liking the banter between Jovi and Stone. Yeah, I can tell too that the ex, his name is Jude. Jude is actually best friends with Stone, I should say. Did I already say that? I don't know. I'm pretty sure I did. Anyway, I think Jude is gonna want Jovi back, but Stone is gonna be like, missed your fucking chance. Also, there's like some hints that Stone maybe liked Jovi first, but then Jude kind of like swooped in. I can't fucking talk today. Chalk it up to Aunt Flo. But so far so good. She's cute. We like her. 2 thumbs up. So in a very technical sense, this is the absolute last video I should be working on right now because it's not anywhere on my posting schedule. And yet here I am a book and a half in because I just can't get enough KU romance right now. And the ones for this video in particular were just really calling to me. So I did finish Stone Cold last night and I ended up giving it 4 stars. It had mutual pining, which we know is something that I'm fond of. I think what I liked about this story was that it did what it said it was going to do and it didn't do anything else. I can appreciate that. This book was under 300 pages, like I said earlier, and it wasn't the most in-depth in terms of relationship development, but I didn't really care because it did the trope that I wanted it to do. It felt well-rounded enough and I enjoyed it. I think the only thing that I maybe would have changed about this book is I think it would have been nice to have a little bit less of a drawn-out conflict with Jovi and Jude. I felt like Jude was pretty irritating at the end of the book with his wishy-washiness. Like, he never ends up becoming a viable love interest for Jovi, thankfully, but he is pretty irritating and I didn't really care about him or his problems. Although I do think it was like a nice representation of how certain friendships can become toxic. I did like seeing Stone kind of pull away from Jude after he noticed just time and time again how shitty the decisions Jude was making were. The was and the were there. Wow, that really fucked me up a little bit. I liked that they kind of separated at the end of the story. Stone really like got to go after the girl he wanted and wasn't apologetic about it. I also like that Jovi was kind of coming to realize her feelings for Stone this whole time. She's like, I always knew that we had more in common and like I've always had a kind of a thing for him, but I haven't been able to say anything. And Stone just being like, I literally pine for you. I would do anything for you. I've only ever been in love one time, and he like won't tell Jovi who it is at the beginning. Come on, it's what I needed. It's what I wanted. Like I said, I am trying to temper your expectations if you pick this book up because this isn't like mind-blowing. This is not the most romantic and intense story I've ever read. It was a page turner. It was entertaining. It was exactly what I wanted. And I think if you're someone who likes mutual pining as much as I do, you will really like this book. It was fun. It was a really fun time. So I'm really glad that I picked that up. And I don't know that I would have if it weren't for this video because the cover, I would say, doesn't really appeal to me. And while the description did, I don't think I would have even clicked into the book to read the description if it wasn't for this video. So thank you, this video, for letting me read this book because I had a good time. Another book I'm having a good time with that has a nearly identical plot, Drowning Aaron by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I kind of feel like I shouldn't have picked this one up next. I didn't really fully realize what this book was when I picked it up, but it is a boyfriend's best friend kind of romance. In this story, Aaron is actually with the best friend or whatever, or she's actually dating someone. Jovi in the last book was single whenever she decided that she was going to like pursue something with Stone. This story, it's about Erin, who we come to know in the first book, and she is working at the college that they graduated from. She's like not super in love with her career and she's just struggling because her family is in kind of a bad place. In the first book, we found out that her brother is an addict and so she enables him, unfortunately. And on top of that, she is also dealing with her dad, who is also kind of an addict. He is an alcoholic and we see Aaron having to like go to his aid and go to his rescue a couple of times. I think she's originally from New Jersey, but her parents moved to Colorado recently after her father lost his job because of his alcoholism. Her mom's not very great either. Aaron just doesn't have like the best background. We're finding out that she has not really told Rob, her fiance, really any of this. She said yes to his proposal, but she's not doing anything to like plan the wedding. It's very obvious she doesn't want to marry this man. Their relationship's kind of on the rocks right now. Rob, her fiance, is in another country and is going to be there for 3 months. It was supposed to be a couple weeks and then it turned into a month and it turned into 3 months, and she's just not as in love with him as she should be, right? And of course Brendan comes in to complicate things. Brendan is the brother of Will from the first book, and his character, I would say, has changed quite a bit in this book compared to how we knew him in the first one. In the first one, he was this like playful, fun guy, but 4 years later, he is a lot grumpier than we knew him. And I don't think it's like out of character for him. I think it's just the way that he specifically interacts with Aaron. They work together, I want to say, and I do think that they have slept together before, but fast forward 4 years, and you know, this entire 4 years he's been kind of mean to Aaron and has said things to Rob about how he shouldn't be with Aaron. He is, I think, in the process of trying to get his business up off the ground in the town that they're currently in, and he is staying with Rob and Aaron, and since Rob is not in town, he's basically just staying with Aaron. So they're living in close quarters. I think he's living in their pool house because apparently Rob is really well to do, and as a result, like, Aaron gets to live in this bougie ass house, but Aaron's really lonely, and it definitely has the same sort of of like melancholy tone that Waking Olivia does. Definitely not as dark, I would say, given the themes, but obviously if you don't want to read about addiction, I wouldn't recommend picking up this book because it definitely deals with that. I am liking Brendan quite a bit as well. I wasn't sure what to expect because, like I said, his character has changed a little bit, and like I didn't know if I really wanted like a playful, bantery guy. Like I didn't know if I would like that going into this book. Now he's like the complete opposite, and I was also kind of unsure about that. But I'm kind of liking it. It is definitely a contrast to Will, who is a very understanding hero. Like Will in Waking Olivia he was kind of a dick, but like, I don't know. He really sought to understand the emotions of Olivia, and I'm not saying Brendan's not like that, but he definitely has a different vibe to him, and I can appreciate that because I don't want just like a retread or a rehash of the same book. So far I'm liking it, just some like good old-fashioned mutual pining. Aaron has been having sex dreams about Brendan, so, it's what a girl wants. It's what a girl needs. You know what else is what a girl wants and needs? These boys right here. These boys right here. I don't know how far I'm gonna get with this tonight because I do actually need to film a DBBC. I could also see myself finishing this because I'm having a good time. So I'm gonna go read. So I finished Drowning Aaron like a while ago. It's been a few weeks since I finished this book. I rewatched my last clip to kind of jog my memory about this book because of all of Elizabeth O'Rourke's books, I kind of feel like this one is the least memorable. And I think for me that comes down to our heroine and our hero. It's not that the relationship building was terrible here. It's not that it wasn't a pleasant reading experience because I love Elizabeth O'Rourke. I just feel like this one kind of paled in comparison to Waking Olivia for sure, but also I think ultimately most of Elizabeth O'Rourke's other works. Now I haven't read all of her stuff, so maybe there's one that I don't want to say sucks more than this, but like sucks more than this. I think my issue here is that our heroine doesn't really have the same zest and personality and flavor that some of Elizabeth O'Rourke's other heroines have, and that's something that I've really come to like about her stories, is how strong-willed her heroines are, how flawed, damaged, and unique they are. Each of them has, something that they're working towards and some obstacles in the way, but I felt like our heroine in this story, she did have obstacles in her way. She didn't really have much in the way of, I don't want to say a personality, but she didn't have much in the way of like ambition. She kind of hates her job at the start of the story, but she never really gets a new one. She just starts to kind of like rethink why she hates her job and she sticks with it, which I mean is fine, I guess, but it was just a little bit lackluster. And then the conflict with her family, I don't felt like really resolved in a way that was satisfying. I kind of hated her family and I don't feel like they got what they deserved, which was kind of frustrating to read about. And then we have our hero who, we kind of get the idea at the beginning of the story that he had a hard breakup with the woman that he was with before Aaron. He says a couple of times something to the effect of like, it was a really hard breakup on him, and Aaron assumes that this person was like the love of his life or something like that, and he got like unceremoniously dumped. That was not the case. In fact, the opposite. Once we find out the reveal there, it kind of left me uncomfortable. I don't want to go into detail because I don't really want to spoil the book for you. It wasn't my favorite. That being said, I mean, I give it 4 stars because I still feel like even Elizabeth O'Rourke's worst books are still better than a lot of romances I read, and frankly, I just feel like her relationship dynamics are something I like. I like this kind of like taboo forbidden romance aspect, and I don't know, I like her stuff. I like how I complained for like 3 minutes, but ultimately, I mean, I still liked it. So obviously finished that book. I have since started The Plan by Carla Sorensen, and I'm like 50% in, and I wanted to update you because I am hoping to finish this one tonight. I feel like I always jinx myself by saying that, but I am finishing this goddamn book tonight because I have a video to post on Sunday, and that would be this video. It's Thursday today. So The Plan by Carla Sorensen is about our main character, Lydia, and at the start of the story, she is in a pretty bad car accident. I think she is the driver. I don't really know the details of what happened, except for she broke her arm and she is traumatized by this experience. She doesn't want to get behind the wheel of a car. She also doesn't want to be driven anywhere. She's just scared of being in the car in general. And her family's worried about her because she is a pretty big time influencer. Her mom is the owner of a professional sports team. Like, she's an NFL football franchise owner. So I guess she owns the Washington Timberwolves, which is like a fictional football team, obviously. And I think her dad has something to do with the team. He's not a coach, but he like kind of helps the coaching staff. So as a result, Lydia's like kind of famous, and she has an Instagram, presence, and she has just kind of like shirked all responsibility after this accident, and her parents are really worried about her. Their way of helping Lydia is to hire a bodyguard for her and to have someone like drive her around and make her feel more comfortable. And the guy that ends up helping her, I think his name is like Eric Wilder. He was a former football player on the Timberwolves, and he stopped playing for the reason that everyone thinks he stopped playing. He had an ACL injury that he could have come back from, but instead instead he chose to, just stop playing football altogether. And we find out that that's partially in part to a really like tough breakup he went through with his ex-wife. His ex-wife ended up cheating on him when he was on the road, and now he's kind of like scarred from that experience. He's not looking for a relationship. She's kind of crushing on him. I don't know. It's cute. I love a good bodyguard romance. I haven't read very many of them, but the ones I have read I've enjoyed. I think the most recent one that I read was probably that Anna Huang book, Twisted Games. This one definitely has a different feel to it. I think I like the writing of this book. I think, okay, my overall thoughts are that I'm enjoying my reading experience so far. I'm having a good time. My only complaint, I would say, is the writing of this book. It's not that it's bad by any means. It's certainly like well written. There's no like grammatical errors or like terrible prose. There's just something about it, and I don't know if it's like the way that our author's introducing new characters into the story, or if it's the way that she's like introducing backstory. It kind of took me a second to kind of like understand what was going on. I still didn't like fully understand what happened to Lydia at the beginning of the story. I wasn't really understanding the relationship between Lydia and Eric at the beginning. A lot was done off page, I guess you could say. I was like, well, how did their relationship develop this quickly? Like, I thought he just started working for her, but I'm quickly up to speed at this 50% mark, and I'm like enjoying their relationship. I am also really liking Lydia as a character, although I do hope that we get more from her. She's really sympathetic in that even though she's an influencer, she's definitely not a Piper from It Happened One Summer type. She definitely is really like strong-willed, very confident. She eventually, I think, wants to take over for her mom's job, which is again being like the owner, the GM. But at the moment she's kind of like deciding what she wants to do, because it's like influencing isn't something she loves, but she doesn't know how to get to where she wants to be. I think that makes her interesting, but I think what's kind of holding me back from like totally loving her is the fact that the way that we're introduced to her, or like the way that we see her through Eric's eyes, is that she is kind of like beyond reproach. Like, she is so magnificent, so beautiful. She's nice to everybody she meets. She just seems a little too perfect, even though like we're inside of her head and we should know she's not perfect. I'm still kind of seeing her that way because of the way she's described by Eric. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that'll like correct itself. But at this point, that's kind of like my thoughts. And Eric, I think he's a good character. He's very stoic, so we haven't gotten a lot from him, but we know that he's obviously like scarred from his ex-wife. And I'm curious to see like what happens with him. I know he's like 30, so he's not too old to continue a professional football career, but like, I don't know how that works. If you've like spent time away, can you come back easily? Is that something that he's going to want to do? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to find out, obviously, but so far so good. I could see this being like 3 or a 4-star read. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star. It didn't like instantly draw me in or anything, but it's certainly pleasant, and I've never read anything from this author before, to my knowledge. I'm having a pretty good time. I would pick up more from her, which I think is a good sign. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and I will keep you posted on my final thoughts and feelings. Okay, so I finished The Plan by Carla Sorensen. Wow, that took me a second, as it normally does when it comes to book titles. I was really on the fence about this book from about the 50 to 70% mark. I was really unsure. I was like, I think this might be a 3-star. Just not feeling it. And then it really turned itself around. I won't say it completely resolved the issues that I had. I really feel like this book suffers from, I don't even want to say relationship development issues. I just prefer my romances that have a lot of dialogue and a lot of time with our characters spent together. I feel like this story really had a lot of time where our characters were in their head. It didn't feel too annoying with that. It wasn't like a ton of internal monologuing, but I really would have preferred more scenes of them together developing their relationship rather than us hearing it later on from them that they hung out, or that at the end of the book we find out that our hero knows the heroine's schedule, that she studies every Tuesday. I don't know how he would know that given what we know of their relationship. Like, he drives her places. I guess they've talked a few times. I don't know. It just felt a little bit weird that a lot of the relationship development happened off page. That being said, all of the other elements of the story I really enjoyed. I feel like the central conflict here, while irritating at times, made a lot of sense. I really felt for Eric. He was a hero who definitely had a past, damaged hero, but he definitely had a reason for it. Felt like his emotional state and emotional vulnerability made sense. He was not someone who made a whole lot of smart decisions, to be honest, but for some reason I'm thinking about this book in comparison to something like that book with the daisies on it, Things We Never Got Over. The hero in that book, it was like he was grumpy for seemingly no reason. We get like a throwaway, about how his family was shitty or something, but like that's it. And I was like, okay, well, that doesn't give you the right to be a dick to everybody. In this book, like, we really understand why Eric is the way he is, especially when we understand how fiercely protective he is of his family and how, his relationship with his ex, how the dissolution of his marriage really affected his family. Like, it makes sense as to why he is the way he is, why he reacts to Lydia the way he does. As heartbreaking and I would say extreme as the emotional fallout was, it felt really realistic. Like, there there is a scene where Lydia overhears Eric saying something to his mom, and she gets really mad. They have this blow up fight, but the things that were said, like, it felt realistic. It felt like something that would definitely happen in real life. And I feel like lately I haven't really read a lot of books like that. It seems like, you know, hero and heroine will have that third act conflict, but I'm like, this is silly, or okay, get me to, you know, get me past this conflict. And in the story I was like, okay, this felt earned, it felt deserved, it makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. I did like them. I liked Lydia. I will say I am a little annoyed that she didn't get more of resolution to her storyline. Granted, at the age that she's at, 22, in grad school, like, I didn't expect her to become the, you know, owner of this football team, like, to take over for her mom at this age. But I think I would have preferred that part of the story to be rounded out just a little bit more. This story actually, and I never fucking say this, could have used a few extra pages. I think, like, getting a little bit more of a wrap up of her storyline, getting a little bit more time after the breakup for them to be together. I would have liked a good grovel from Eric, to be honest. That would have really sealed the deal and made this book that much stronger, and then obviously more relationship development. But like, that being said, this is a 4-star read. I was going between 3 and 4-star in my head, but comparing it to the books that I've read this year, I really do feel like this feels like a 4-star. I would be interested to read more from this author in the future. I think if you've read anything by Adriana Locke, you would enjoy this book, because I feel like these two authors have a similar way of writing things that works for me. It's nice to have go-to KU authors that you know are going to write something solid. They're not going to give you bullshit that's like 600 pages and poorly edited. So I'm glad that I read this, actually. I don't know that I would have picked this up on my own as much as I love a sports romance. I feel like they kind of run together, and the cover didn't really like totally draw me in. I mean, he's hot and like whatever, but it seems kind of like standard, I guess. So I don't know if I would have picked this up on my own. Next book I think I'm going to pick up will be tomorrow morning, and it's going to be Enemies Abroad by R.S. Gray, which I am a little worried about. I did check, and it's less than 300 pages, which I love to see. I have tried a couple of R.S. Gray books in the past, both of which I've DNF'd because I haven't totally loved her stuff. I just feel like the sense of humor isn't there for me. Rom-coms are hit or miss, so we shall see. Okay, so I am 50% into Enemies Abroad by R.S. Gray, and I won't lie, I'm actually not hating it, and it has been surprisingly easy to get into this book. And I'm not sure if it's because it's short and kind of snappy, but I'm just not hating it. This story is about our main character, Audrey. She is tasked with going to Italy with her sworn enemy, Noah, who is another fellow teacher. I believe she teaches English, he teaches algebra. I guess the person that was in charge of taking these middle schoolers to Italy injured themselves, and so Audrey and Noah have individually agreed to help on this trip because they get a bonus out of it. Obviously, when they agreed to it, neither of them knew that the other would be on this trip, and now they begrudgingly have to like work together to wrangle these middle schoolers and also make sure they learn things. I'm liking it. It's not the best romance in the world. I don't think we're getting enough interaction between hero and heroine. Kind of the same complaint that I had with the last book, but the writing is good enough to where I'm not upset at where things are going. This book is very fast moving. It is fast paced enough to where I am having a good time, and I actually am not hating the more like humorous elements to the story, which I think was my biggest hesitation going into this book, because I feel like rom-coms can be really hit or miss. If you don't vibe with the sense of humor of the author, it's going to be unlikely that you're actually going to enjoy the story. And in this book, I'm actually not hating the sense of humor that's being used. I do think it's like maybe a touch much at times, but it is lending an air of lightheartedness and fun to the story, so I'm not upset about it. We've already had a couple of moments of sexual tension between Noah and Audrey, which I've appreciated. I can tell that he has kind of had a thing for her this entire time, which is a trope that I really like, is the guy falls first and the guy, like, you know, pines for her. I appreciate that, but I do, again, ultimately want more in terms of backstory and or interactions between the two of them. We're being told that they have this like playful, kind of like hostile relationship, I guess you could say. Back home, you know, they definitely have this like enemies situation going on, but then we never really get to see those moments. We'll just hear in passing like, oh, do you remember that time when he did this or when I did this? I get it, like we're trying to build a backstory, but we're not being shown enough. We're being told so much that I'm not really like fully buying it, right? There's nothing in my eyes really leading us to believe that he has cared for her this entire time, except for like maybe one scene that we've had so far. So I want more dialogue moments. I feel like we're in our heroine's head so much. It's not a dual POV story, that I think this actually would have been benefited from being dual POV, or from, again, having like more actual moments between hero and heroine. So it's toughy because I'm enjoying it, but it's not like the best thing I've ever read, but I don't know, I'm surprised. It's feeling 3 or 4 stars at this point to me. It'd be really cool if like all of the books in this video were 4 or 5 star reads, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up and I will report back on my final thoughts and feelings. So we've come to the end of the road of this this reading vlog. I know what you're thinking. We have one more book to talk about after Enemies Abroad, and you'd be correct, but we're getting there, okay? First, let's talk about Enemies Abroad. I finished this one, and I definitely spoke too soon. It's a 3-star, not a 4-star read, which is a little disappointing, although I will say I'm still ultimately impressed with this book as compared to others that I've tried by this author in the past. It had a familiar formula, I guess you could say, that kind of worked. The issue that I had with this book was, I mean, there were a lot, let's be honest. All of the things that I stated previously about there not being enough relationship development or on-page dialogue, that still stands. But I think my biggest issue, and this is gonna sound maybe kind of weird, is that there were no stakes here. There was no third act conflict, which, I mean, I guess in some ways people, dislike a long, drawn-out third act conflict. I get that. But there was no conflict here really at all. There was just this will they, won't they, until they get together, and then that was the end of the book. If you're looking for something that is really palatable, kind of funny, and easy breezy, and really focuses on the Italian countryside and Rome, you will love this. This book was so heavy on the descriptions of Italy. I feel like we could have cut a lot of those descriptions out, and we would have gotten more page time for the actual relationship to bloom, and that would have been great. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good beachy read, I like a good summer read, but I'm here for the relationship, not necessarily the setting, so I needed a little bit more from the story in general. I don't know, it was okay. I just didn't like love this relationship, and it's a book that's ultimately so forgettable. And you know what? I respect Miss R.S. Gray for like being in her bag. She really turns out the romances, and people seem to really like them. I definitely think these are popcorn side of romance, for lack of a better word. Like, some authors just really crank out the stories and are like, here you go. Like Vi Keeland and Penelope Ward, they just crank shit out and they're like, here you go. Take it or leave it. Sometimes the story elements aren't quite as developed as they should be, but like, it works. It is a full story. So, I mean, that's kind of how I felt about this one. That sounds bad. No shade, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's got their own priorities. Some authors are not seeking to write an angsty, swoon-worthy, like, emotional story, and that's fine, but that's usually what I'm looking for, so this wasn't my perfect read. Moving on to The Secret by Max Monroe. Wow, this one is quite interesting. I DNF'd it for 2 reasons. One, I knew this book was over 300 pages, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That coupled with the fact that I wasn't enjoying the story, it was a DNF for me. I need to protect my love of reading and the path that I'm on right now, which is like reading things that I'm enjoying. I feel really confident about my decision to DNF this book. So The Secret is about our hero, Ty, and at the beginning of the story, he is seeking out a fortune teller. I guess this fortune teller told one of his brothers years ago that he would like end up with a woman, and that came true. So Ty is going back to the fortune teller to like see what's up. Honestly, I can't remember what she foretold, but later on, after family dinner that same night, Ty ends up going to a bar and he meets a woman who is there with her older sister and her older sister's wife. There's like a set of dares, I guess you could say, that the heroine is supposed to carry out, one of which is to give a stranger her panties and just like leave. I don't know why this is like not cool with me. I don't have any moral objections to this as like a storyline. I didn't feel the chemistry between the hero and the heroine, and the premise is that, she does this like really bold thing, and then we find out that she is actually going to be kind of under the tutelage of this guy who is a professor. Her dad is also a professor and like works with the hero. He's like, take my daughter Rachel under your wing. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure. And then he realizes that Rachel is actually the girl that handed him her panties at that club. I just wasn't really like vibing with the dialogue and the way the story was written. I really didn't like the way our hero was written. The way he kind of describes himself at the beginning of the story. I'm sometimes willing to overlook a cocky hero, but I just like didn't really like the way he was described. I didn't like how we were thrown so much shit at the beginning about like who his family was and like all of these different family members. And I guess if you like the other books in the series, that probably doesn't bother you so much, but like I haven't read any of the other books in the series, so I wasn't invested and I didn't care about the siblings. And there's a lot to keep straight at the beginning of the story. I don't know why I'm trying to justify why I DNF this book. It just wasn't for me, and I didn't want to hate read this book. Sometimes I can do that, but this one, it was more like extreme apathy. And I was like, you know what? I can just leave it here and end the vlog on a fairly high note, to be honest. Actually had a pretty good time with this experiment, and I feel like I would not hesitate in the future to use my Kindle app to like find new reads. I think in a lot of ways this was more successful than my Goodreads readers also enjoyed experiments, because by picking books based off of like a recent Kindle Unlimited read, I was given more KU books to read, which I appreciate. I feel like these are books that I hadn't necessarily seen before, which I think to me is exciting. Like a lot of the books that, Goodreads readers also enjoyed, it's like giving you the same vibe like traditionally published romance recommendations based off a book you've already read, whereas Kindle seems to give you like fresher recommendations. And I do think that a lot of these books kind of fit in with the vibe of Waking Olivia. Now, none of them were like perfect matches or anything, and I wasn't looking for like a rehash of that story, you know, but Drowning Aaron was a good one because it was obviously like the second book in the series. I understand why they recommended that one. I really liked Stone Cold, had a similar premise to Drowning Aaron and definitely a different tone, I would say, than Waking Olivia, but I think if you liked Waking Olivia, you'd probably still like Stone Cold. The Plan, I think, was another sports romance and it did have an emotional thread, so again, that was a pretty good recommendation. The two books that were like the most unlike Waking Olivia were the two that I disliked the most, which I think makes sense given that these books are just kind of like outside of my wheelhouse, kind of a random rom-com and then I think maybe it was meant to be a rom-com teacher-student thing. I don't know. I had a good time doing this. I would definitely not hesitate to, again, use this feature on my Kindle, but I also wouldn't hesitate to make another video like this. So let me know if you'd be interested in seeing another one of these videos in the future. I had a good time with it and I think it's another like fun spin on Kindle Unlimited. I obviously do Kindle Unlimited videos here, but I feel like this is kind of a slightly fresher, slightly more exciting and interesting take on my typical like reading 3 KU books in one video sort of vlog. So let me know if you enjoyed this. I would be interested to know if you've read any of these books or if you have any just like KU recommendations for me. I'm always looking for good things, especially things that are under the radar. So thank you so much for watching. I love you so much and until next time.